The silent cabin. Dusty's boots sank into the overgrown grass, each step a small act of rebellion against the encroaching wilderness. The farm, once a testament to shared dreams, was now a reflection of his solitude. Weeds strangled the vegetable garden Sarah had meticulously planned, and the barn door hung crookedly, a silent testament to his neglect. He told himself he'd fix it tomorrow. He'd been telling himself that for months. The sun beat down on his weathered face as he wrestled a fallen fence post upright. Sweat stung his eyes, blurring the already hazy landscape. He missed the crisp scent of Sarah's lavender soap, the gentle hum of her voice as she tended the chickens, the comforting weight of her hand in his. Now only the wind whispered secrets he couldn't decipher. Later, seeking respite from the heat, Dusty retreated to the shadowed coolness of the attic. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the gloom, illuminating forgotten relics of a life lived fully. He coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. Sarah had loved rummaging through old things, finding beauty in discarded treasures. He, on the other hand, preferred things neat and orderly. Or, at least, he used to. He stumbled upon a small, ornate box tucked away in a corner beneath a pile of moth-eaten quilts. Its once vibrant paint was chipped and faded, revealing the bare wood beneath. Hesitantly, he picked it up. He remembered the day he'd given it to her, a clumsy offering of love on their first anniversary. She'd squealed with delight, her eyes sparkling like the sapphires he couldn't afford. She'd wound it up immediately, the tinkling melody filling their small cabin with an airy joy. He hadn't heard that melody in far too long. He ran a callous thumb over the intricately carved roses on its lid, a lump forming in his throat. He tried to open it, but the latch was stuck. After a moment's struggle, it gave way with a protesting click. The box was empty. And broken. The delicate mechanism lay in pieces at the bottom, a tangled mess of brass and steel. The familiar melody silenced. A wave of grief washed over him, stronger than any he'd felt in weeks. It wasn't just the music box, it was everything. The farm, their dreams, their future, all broken, scattered like the pieces in the box. He sank to the floor, the box clutched tightly in his hands. He closed his eyes, and the years melted away. He was standing in the meadow behind the cabin, Sarah by his side. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, and fireflies winked in the gathering dusk. They were younger then, full of hope and brimming with plans. "Imagine, Dusty," Sarah had said, her voice filled with wonder, "a whole orchard of apple trees, laden with fruit. And a garden bursting with color, enough to fill every vase in the house." He chuckled, wrapping his arm around her. "And what will we do with all those apples and flowers, Mrs. Rivers? We'll share them, of course. With everyone who needs them. We'll make this place a haven, a place where people can find peace and comfort." He could almost feel her hand in his, the warmth of her smile. They dreamed of building a community, a sanctuary in the harsh wilderness. A place where laughter echoed through the trees and the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air. The memory faded, leaving him shivering in the cold reality of the attic. He was alone. The orchard remained unplanted, the garden choked with weeds. The dream, like the music box, was broken. A single tear traced a path down his weathered cheek, landing on the broken mechanism in the box. He wiped it away roughly, a flicker of anger igniting within him. He couldn't stay like this, consumed by grief and regret. Sarah wouldn't have wanted that. He rose to his feet, his back aching, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't forget her, but he couldn't let her memory chain him to the past. He had a farm to fix, a life to rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, a new dream to discover. He carefully closed the music box, the click of the latch echoing in the silent attic. He descended the stairs, a newfound determination in his stride. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the neglected fields. Sunlight, fierce and unforgiving, bronzed his face, a sting he almost welcomed against the dull ache of bereavement that had long shadowed him. Years had passed since he'd ventured this far west, not since Sarah. He banished the memory, his attention snapping back to the present need, inspecting the farm's western boundary, ensuring the fences held against wandering livestock, or worse. The terrain unfolded, a vast expanse of parched earth and hardy shrubs blurring into the distant, shimmering heat haze. A kettle of vultures wheeled high above, their dark forms etching a macabre signature against the brilliant sky. Dusty's brow furrowed, and he urged Blue onward. Vultures this far afield suggested something amiss. Reaching the crest of a low ridge, the vista below robbed him of breath. Not just a miss, devastation. Wagons were strewn about like discarded playthings, their frames shattered and splintered. Ripped canvas flapped listlessly, grim penance of defeat in the gentle breeze. A coppery, sickening stench mingled with the sweet, cloying odor of decay, assaulting his nostrils. Dismounting, Dusty steadied Blue, the horse's eyes rolling white with fear. The silence, save for the wind's lament, was profound, amplifying the horror. Revolver drawn, though a cold certainty told him he was too late, he moved cautiously through the debris field, each step crunching on splintered wood and scattered belongings. A child's doll lay face down, its painted gaze fixed on the unforgiving ground. A battered tin cup spun erratically in the breeze. Personal effects, once treasured, now lay scattered amidst the carnage, stark evidence of lives violently extinguished. He discovered the bodies, men, women, children, their faces frozen in masks of terror. Some were scalped, others pierced by volleys of arrows. The barbarity was complete, senseless. He recognized the gruesome signature of a crow raid, the distinctive arrowheads, the smeared pigments of their war paint adorning the wagon's sides. Forcing himself forward, Dusty called out, his voice raspy, raw with dread. "Hello? Anyone?" Only the wind's whisper answered. He found a woman slumped against a wagon wheel, cradling a small, blood-soaked bundle. Kneeling, his spirit plummeting, he saw the vacant stare of her lifeless eyes. Gently he unwrapped the bundle. A babe, mere months old, its peaceful features stark against the horror. The remainder of the afternoon blurred into a grim ritual of burial. Using his hands and a broken shovel unearthed from a wagon, he scraped out shallow graves, shrouding the bodies in shreds of canvas and tattered blankets. A meager offering of respect, but the best he could provide. As the sun bled below the horizon, painting the heavens in shades of angry crimson and somber violet, Dusty stood by the final resting place, his shoulders bowed with the weight of exhaustion and despair. He had buried Sarah, and now these strangers. What measure of death could one man endure? He surveyed the bleak landscape, the hush broken only by the lonely cry of a distant coyote. The wagon train, once emblematic of hope and westward movement, now stood as a monument to utter hopelessness. He had to leave to escape the suffocating weight of so much death. Mounting blue, he turned toward the farm, the image of the butchered wagon seared into his memory. He rode at a snail's pace, each footfall a muffled echo of the butchery he had witnessed. He needed to inform someone, to alert the authorities. Yet, even as he considered it, a disturbing thought took root. What if other wagon trains were out there, heading unknowingly into peril? Could he possibly forestall another such tragedy? A flicker of life. The last shovelful of earth thudded onto the shallow grave. Dusty stood, back aching, and wiped the sweat from his brow with a dirt-stained forearm. A grim satisfaction settled over him. He'd done what he could. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then, a sound. Faint, almost imperceptible against the rustling prairie grass and the mournful cry of a distant hawk. He paused, shovel still in hand, and listened. There it was again. A whimper. Dusty's heart lurched. He scanned the wreckage, his gaze sweeping over splintered wood and discarded belongings. Hope, a dangerous and long-dormant ember, flickered in his chest. He moved towards the sound, his boots crunching on broken glass and scattered beads. The whimper came again, weaker this time, from beneath the canvas cover of a shattered wagon. He cautiously approached, his senses on high alert. Could it be an animal? A wounded dog, perhaps? He doubted it. That sound. It was distinctly human. He gripped the edge of the tattered canvas and pulled. The material ripped easily, revealing a dark space beneath the wagon frame. The smell of blood and dust filled his nostrils. He knelt, squinting into the gloom. There, huddled in the corner, was a young woman. Her dress, once probably fine, was torn and stained crimson. Her face, pale and streaked with dirt, was barely visible in the dim light. A dark mat of blood clung to her hair. She was unconscious. Dusty's breath hitched. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and gently touched her cheek. Her skin was cool, clammy. He pressed his fingers to her throat, searching for a pulse. Faint, but there. He swore softly under his breath. He couldn't leave her here to die. Carefully, he slid his arms beneath her, supporting her head and back. She was light, too light. He lifted her from the wreckage, cradling her in his arms. Her head lolled against his chest. Her eyelids fluttered open for a moment, revealing eyes the color of a stormy sky, before closing again. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've got you," Dusty murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm gonna get you home." He adjusted his grip and started walking. The cabin seemed miles away. Each step was a struggle, the weight of the woman a constant reminder of the tragedy he had witnessed. The sun beat down on his back, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. He imagined his mother's face, etched with worry, her hands calloused from years of hard work. He remembered her unwavering kindness, her belief in doing what was right, no matter the cost. That memory fueled him. The landscape blurred into a hazy green and brown. The air grew thick with the scent of sagebrush and sun-baked earth. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, his thoughts narrowed to a single purpose, getting her to safety. Finally, the cabin came into view, a small, weathered structure against the vastness of the prairie. He pushed open the door with his shoulder, staggering inside. The interior was cool and dim, a welcome relief from the oppressive heat. He carried her to his bed, the only soft surface in the cabin, and gently laid her down. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. He knew he had to act fast. He had to save her. This flicker of life, discovered amongst so much death, was a responsibility he couldn't ignore. Lily of the Valley. Silence enveloped the cabin, punctuated only by the snap and hiss of the fire and Lily's shallow gasps. Dusty, on his knees beside the makeshift cot, replaced the compress on her brow with a cooler one. The fever still lingered, but the violent shivers had ceased. He tended to her injuries, mostly superficial abrasions, though a deep laceration marred her temple, demanding stitches. His mother's sewing box, gathering dust for years, had been surprisingly useful. He'd coaxed a few spoonfuls of broth past her lips, nursing her like an infant. Now he simply watched, a nascent emotion, hope, perhaps, a feeling foreign to him for many months, stirring within. He adjusted the logs in the hearth, ensuring a sustained fire throughout the night, then sank into his worn chair, rifle within easy reach. Sleep would be a luxury. When Lily stirred at last, the morning light filtered through the window, a pale, washed-out blue. Her eyes fluttered open, wide and vacant, searching the unfamiliar surroundings. A wave of panic washed over her, evident in the quickening of her breath. She attempted to sit up, but a dizzy spell forced her back against the rough-spun blanket. "Take it easy," Dusty murmured, his voice a soothing balm. He approached, offering her water. "You've been through quite an ordeal." She stared at him, brow creased in confusion. "Who are you?" Her voice was a mere thread, scratchy and weak. "Where am I?" "My name's Dusty. You're in my cabin. You were injured. I found you." "Found me?" Bewilderment clouded her face. She tentatively touched the bandage swathing her head. I can't remember anything." Dusty's heart plummeted. Amnesia. One more obstacle in an already burdened existence. "Don't fret," he said, striving for a reassuring tone he didn't feel. "Just rest. Your memory might return with time." He assisted her in drinking, the cup trembling in her frail hands. She swallowed, eyes locked on him. What's my name?" He paused, weighing his options. She deserved an identity, a clean slate, a chance at renewal. He recalled the tiny embroidered blossoms adorning the remnants of her torn dress, delicate, tenacious flowers pushing through the hard-packed earth. "I don't know your name," he admitted softly, "but I saw a flower on your dress. A white one. I think I'll call you Lily, if that's okay." A ghost of a smile played on her lips. "Lily?" she echoed, savoring the sound. "I like it." The days unfolded into a pattern. Dusty cared for Lily, feeding her, aiding her tentative steps, recounting tales of the mountains, the creatures that roamed them, anything to occupy her thoughts. She was remarkably quick, eager to contribute to the household tasks, her initial frailty gradually yielding to a quiet resolve. She would strain to unlock the past, squeezing her eyes shut in concentration, but met only with a void, a vast, echoing emptiness. One evening, as the setting sun splashed the sky with vibrant hues, Lily sat with Dusty on the porch. He was shaping a piece of wood with his knife, giving form to a small bird. She observed him, a contemplative expression on her face. "Why did you save me, Dusty?" she wondered quietly. He ceased his carving, his gaze shifting toward the distant peaks. "I don't know," he confessed, the truth a heavy weight. Maybe because someone was in need of rescue. Maybe because I needed to be the one to do it." He met her gaze, his eyes reflecting a depth of sorrow she couldn't fully grasp. "My mother always preached that kindness was the only thing that truly mattered. I haven't been particularly kind lately." Lily reached out, her hand covering his. Her touch was delicate, hesitant, yet radiated a warmth that penetrated his core. "You're kind now," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "You saved me. You gave me a name. You gave me a life. Rebuilding together." Each dawn painted the valley anew, rose and gold hues beckoning Lily from her fitful sleep. With each sunrise came a renewed resolve, a quiet strength to contribute. From the window, Dusty's form was a familiar anchor against the nascent day as he saw to the livestock, his movements a practiced, somber ballet. Impulsively, she followed him one morning. "Dusty?" she called, her voice still thin. "Is there anything I can do?" He paused, wiping his forehead. Surprise flickered across his features, followed by something akin to relief. "Now, Lily, you ought to be resting." "Resting feels wrong," she replied, nodding towards the untended garden. "Perhaps I could help there?" He studied her, his gaze lingering on the grit in her expression. "All right," he conceded, a nascent smile touching his lips. "But easy does it. No strain." The cool earth yielded beneath her bare feet as she knelt beside him, plucking at weeds. The pungent aroma of soil and burgeoning life awakened something deep within her. Dusty patiently demonstrated the difference between intruder and struggling tomato sprout, his calloused hands surprisingly gentle as he guided hers. She proved a quick study, her fingers nimble and adept. A comfortable quiet descended as they worked, punctuated by the chirping chorus of crickets and the distant bellows of cattle. After a time, Dusty straightened, arching his back. "Tell me about yourself, Lily," he requested, his voice softer than she recalled hearing. "About before all this." Her fingers froze in the dirt. The question reverberated between them. She tried to speak, but the words stalled, stopped by that frustrating, aching emptiness. I can't," she confessed, her voice almost inaudible. "It's gone." Understanding softened Dusty's features. He eased back down, respecting the silence. Instead, he offered, "I lost someone once. My wife, Sarah. She adored the garden. Knew every bloom by name and how to coax the most vibrant colors from the fussiest plants." He paused, his gaze lost in the distance. "We built this place together, brick by brick, dream by dream." He spoke of Sarah at length, sketching a portrait of a woman effervescent with laughter and light. Lily listened, captivated, drinking in the details of a life beyond her reach. The ache of her missing memories, the frustration of the unknown, receded slightly with each word, replaced by a quiet empathy and a burgeoning awareness of the man beside her. In the following days, a rhythm emerged. Lily assisted with the garden, the cooking, even mastered basic mending under Dusty's tutelage. She discovered an unexpected talent for baking, filling the small house with the comforting fragrance of rising bread. The oppressive silence slowly lifted, supplanted by the murmur of conversation and infrequent bursts of mirth. One evening, while watching the sunset from the porch, Lily recounted a day's escapade, her awkward attempt to milk a cow that culminated in a bovine offering of a milk bath and a very unimpressed cow. Dusty's laughter boomed, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the cabin. It was the first time Lily had heard him genuinely laugh, a sound that sent warmth blooming through her. He checked himself abruptly, a flush creeping up his neck. "Sorry," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Didn't mean to carry on." "Don't be," Lily said softly, touching his arm. "It's good to hear you laugh, Dusty." His gaze met hers, filled with gratitude and something else, an emotion just out of reach. "It's good to laugh," he admitted, his voice rough. "It's been a long time." As the stars began to prick the velvet canvas of the night sky, Lily understood that something transformative was underway. They were rebuilding, not just the farm, but their very selves, piece by piece, laugh by laugh, memory by created memory, forging a fresh start from the wreckage of their former lives. Whispers of a gang. The bell above the door of Martha Bell's general store jingled, announcing Dusty and Lily's arrival. The air inside was thick with the smells of dry goods, pickling spices, and freshly brewed coffee. Martha, a woman built like a sturdy oak, was holding court behind the counter, a gaggle of townsfolk hanging on her every word. "And they say he leaves a calling card, a coyote's tooth on every victim," Martha was saying, her voice a low rumble that carried through the store. "Coyote Jack, they call him. Meanest hombre this side of the Mississippi." Dusty steered Lily towards the far side of the store, hoping to avoid the gossip. He needed flour and sugar, and Lily wanted to pick out some ribbon for her hair. But Martha's voice, like a persistent fly, buzzed in his ears. "Heard tell he's looking for someone specific," Martha continued, leaning conspiratorially closer to her audience. "A missing heiress from back east. Rich as Croesus, they say. Vanished without a trace after that wagon train massacre up near the Black Ridge." Dusty felt Lily stiffen beside him. He glanced at her, noticing the slight tremor in her hands as she reached for a bolt of blue ribbon. He quickly grabbed the flour and sugar, hoping to make a swift exit. "Pay them no mind, Lily," Dusty said quietly as they stepped back out into the sunshine, the bell jingling again behind them. "Martha loves a good story, and most of it's probably just that, stories." Lily didn't reply, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and Dusty could see a flicker of something in her eyes he couldn't quite decipher. Worry, perhaps? Or something else entirely? Back at the farm, as Lily kneaded dough for bread, Dusty chopped wood, the rhythmic thud of the axe a counterpoint to the unsettling thoughts swirling in his head. He stole glances at Lily, noticing the furrow in her brow, the way she seemed lost in her own world. "You all right, Lily?" he asked, setting the axe aside. She looked up, startled, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "Yes, Dusty. Just thinking. About what Martha was saying?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It's just that massacre. It's awful. And this Coyote Jack, is he really that dangerous?" Dusty sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He's trouble, no doubt. But he's a long way from here. We're safe, Lily. Don't you worry." He wanted to believe the words as he spoke them. He walked over to her, wiping flour from her cheek with his thumb. "This farm is a good place, Lily. We'll look after each other. That's all that matters." He met her gaze, his own filled with a mixture of reassurance and a growing tenderness. Lily managed a weak smile and returned to kneading the dough, her movements now more deliberate, as if she was trying to ground herself in the simple, repetitive task. But Dusty couldn't shake the feeling that Martha's whispers had planted a seed of unease, a seed that threatened to sprout and disrupt the fragile peace they had cultivated. The wind seemed to carry the faint howl of a coyote in the distance, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beyond their small haven. Fragmented memories. The rhythmic creak of the butter churn usually soothed Lily, but today it grated on her nerves. The kitchen, usually a haven filled with the comforting aroma of baking bread, felt stifling. She paused, the wooden dasher suspended midair. A sudden, jarring image flashed behind her eyes, shimmering chandeliers, the swirling gowns of dancers, the lilting melody of a waltz. The scent of roses, overpowering and sweet, momentarily eclipsed the yeasty tang of the dough rising on the hearth. She gasped, dropping the dasher with a clatter. The image vanished as quickly as it came, leaving her disoriented and trembling. "What was that?" Dusty, who had been sharpening tools on the porch, rushed inside, his brow furrowed with concern. "Lily? What happened? Are you all right?" He knelt beside her, his calloused hand gently taking hers. His touch, warm and steady, grounded her. "Just a bit dizzy," she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. She hated lying to him, but the memory, so vivid and foreign, frightened her. It felt like a dream, yet more real than any dream she'd ever had. Dusty helped her to a chair. "Maybe you're working too hard. You haven't been sleeping well, have you?" She shook her head, the lie easier this time. "I'm fine, Dusty. Really." But later, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, the words tumbled out. "Dusty," she began hesitantly, I had a strange vision, I think." He listened patiently as she described the ballroom, the music, the overwhelming sense of elegance she supposed was the only word for it. She couldn't describe the dresses that were in her vision, but knew they were not the simple calico she was now used to. When she finished, Dusty was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Visions, huh?" he said finally, his voice low. "Sometimes the mind plays tricks on us, especially when we've been through, well, like you have." "But it felt so real," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "More real than anything I can remember." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of the evening air. "It's like there's a whole other life inside me fighting to get out. And I'm afraid of what it might be." He reached out and took her hand again, his grip firm. "There's nothing to be afraid of, Lily. Whatever's in your past, it doesn't change who you are now. You're kind, you're strong, and you're helping me rebuild this place, this life. That's what matters." His words were comforting, but they didn't erase the fear. The glimpse of that other life, the life of ballrooms and roses, felt like a puzzle piece she couldn't fit into the simple picture she had created for herself. What if I don't belong here, Dusty?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What if I belong in that place?" Dusty turned to face her fully, his eyes filled with a fierce protectiveness. "Lily," he said, his voice firm, "you belong right here. With me. Don't you ever doubt that." He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. But even in his embrace, the fragmented memories continued to swirl within her, a confusing and unsettling reminder of a past she couldn't grasp and a future she couldn't predict. A life of luxury completely at odds with the simple existence she had come to know. She didn't know which life to fear losing more. Coyote's shadow. The dust cloud appeared on the horizon like a malevolent spirit, growing steadily larger with each passing minute. Dusty squinted, his hand instinctively moving to rest on the Winchester leaning against the porch railing. It wasn't a stagecoach or even a small group of travelers. This was bigger, angrier. Lily emerged from the barn, wiping her hands on her apron. "Trouble, Dusty?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded grimly. "Looks that way." As the riders drew closer, the details became starkly clear. 8 men, hard-faced and heavily armed, led by a figure whose reputation preceded him like a swarm of locusts, Coyote Jack. They reined in their horses just outside the fenced yard, the animals snorting and pawing the ground, sending up puffs of dust. Coyote Jack, a lean man with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, dismounted with a fluid grace that belied his brutality. "Dusty Rivers," he drawled, his voice a low rasp. "Heard you were keeping to yourself out here. Mighty neighborly of you." The words dripped with sarcasm. Dusty stepped off the porch, his gaze unwavering. "What do you want, Coyote?" "Just passing through," Coyote Jack replied, his eyes scanning the farm, lingering on the freshly tilled fields, the sturdy barn, and finally, settling on Lily, who had instinctively moved closer to Dusty. "Heard tell there might be some folks heading this way. Folks running from difficulties." "Haven't seen anyone," Dusty said, his voice flat, betraying nothing. Coyote Jack chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Now, Dusty, that ain't very hospitable. A man could get the wrong impression. Might think you were hiding something." He took a step closer, and Silas the Knife Blackwood, a tall, gaunt man with a perpetual sneer, moved to flank him. "I said I haven't seen anyone," Dusty repeated, his hand tightening on the Winchester. Coyote Jack's gaze returned to Lily. "And who might this be?" he asked, his eyes narrowed. Dusty placed a protective arm around her shoulders. "This is Lily. She helps me with the farm." Coyote Jack circled them slowly, his eyes assessing. Lily stood tall, despite her fear, meeting his gaze with a surprising amount of defiance. He noted the way she held herself, the delicate bones of her face, and the faint, almost imperceptible accent that colored her speech. Even in a simple homespun dress, there was an air of refinement about her that didn't quite fit the rough-and-tumble life of the frontier. Her boots, though scuffed and worn, were a finer leather than any he'd seen on a farm girl. "Lily, you say?" Coyote Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A pretty name. Where are you from, Lily?" Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second, her eyes darting to Dusty for reassurance. "Around," she said, her voice soft. "Been moving around a lot." "Moving around," Coyote Jack repeated, savoring the words. "That so? Seems a shame to be moving around so much when you could be settled down. Safe." He let the word hang in the air, a subtle threat. "Tell me, Lily, have you ever seen a woman with hair the color of spun gold and eyes like the summer sky? Goes by the name of Annalise." Lily's breath hitched, a barely perceptible tremor running through her body. Dusty felt it and his grip tightened on her. "I don't know anyone by that name," she said, her voice stronger this time. Coyote Jack's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. "Pity. Well, Dusty, it's been a pleasure. But I'll be keeping an eye on things. Wouldn't want any misunderstandings." He nodded curtly, then remounted his horse. "Let's ride." The gang turned their horses and rode off, leaving behind a swirling cloud of dust and a palpable sense of dread. Dusty watched them disappear over the horizon, his jaw tight. He knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. He turned to Lily, his eyes searching hers. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly, but he could see the fear etched on her face. The shadows of Coyote Jack and his gang had fallen across their farm, and the future, once so bright with promise, now seemed uncertain and fraught with danger. The ring of Rothbart, a heavy quiet, thick with menace, settled in the barn. Coyote Jack's gaze, a predator's assessment, remained fixed on Lily, who stood petrified, her grip of ice on the stall's edge. Dusty moved, a shield forged of desperation, placing himself before her. "You were a skin about someone," Dusty began, his voice a steady counterpoint to the tremor in his chest. "I already told you, it's just me and Lily here." A yellow grin split Coyote Jack's face. "Dead wrong, friend." He inclined his head towards a gaunt man lurking in his shadow, a visage etched with the map of old violence. "Silas has a way of seeing what others miss. Silas, show them." Silas, rumored to be Silas the Knife, moved with unsettling stealth, his footfalls muted on the hard-packed earth. He halted before Lily, his stare unwavering. With surprising delicacy, he reached for her hand. She flinched, resisting the urge to recoil. Silas turned her hand over, scrutinizing the palm, then each finger. Dusty tensed, ready to defend, but Coyote Jack's raised hand halted him. Silas's focus intensified, his callous thumb tracing the ornate gold band adorning Lily's right ring finger, an intricate dance of intertwined roses and thorns. Rothbart, he breathed, his voice a gravelly whisper. The Rothbart crest. Haven't seen one in decades. My mother served that family. A ripple of hushed surprise spread through the gathered men. Coyote Jack's grin broadened, twisting his features into something truly sinister. He clapped, the sound echoing sharply in the sudden stillness. Well now, what's this? Seems our little lost lamb isn't so lost after all. He edged closer to Dusty, triumph glinting in his eyes. You see, friend, we're not just hunting anybody. We're after someone significant. Someone important. He turned his attention back to Lily, his tone oozing false charm. Baroness Anneliese von Rothbart. Has a certain ring to it, wouldn't you agree? The blood seemed to drain from Lily's face. She stared, eyes wide with dawning recognition. A jolt of memory, sharp and sudden, pierced the fog in her mind. The roses, the thorns, a colossal haul. A severe face. It churned just beneath the surface. No, she managed, shaking her head vehemently. That's not. I'm Lily. Just Lily. But the words rang hollow even to her own ears. The ring, Silas's knowing gaze, the fragmented images coalescing in her mind, they all pointed to a truth she could no longer deny. A primal surge of protectiveness roared through Dusty, eclipsing any fear. He stepped in front of Lily once more, his jaw clenched. You're wrong. Her name is Lily. She's nobody. She's got nothing, nobody but me. Coyote Jack's laughter scraped the air, a harsh, unpleasant sound. Oh, but she does, friend. A family with deep pockets and a thirst for her return. Or rather, what she carries. He gestured to his men. Take her. Two brutes moved forward, their expressions devoid of any pretense of kindness. Dusty exploded into action, seizing a hay fork and swinging it with desperate force. The tines found purchase in one man's chest, sending him stumbling, but the other was quicker, slamming his rifle butt against Dusty's skull. A blinding supernova erupted behind Dusty's eyes, and the world dissolved beneath him. Lily's scream tore through the air as she reached for Dusty, but the men seized her arms, dragging her away. She fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, kicking and clawing, but their grip was unyielding. Dusty, she cried, her voice fracturing with despair. Dusty, help me. Coyote Jack watched, a cruel smile playing on his lips as his men manhandled Lily toward the exit. He knelt beside Dusty, pressing the weight of his boot against his chest. Should have stayed out of this, friend, he murmured, his voice a venomous whisper. Now, you've complicated things considerably. He straightened, brushing dust from his trousers. Finish him, he commanded his remaining men. Make sure he doesn't get up. Then, with a final, triumphant glance at the struggling Lily, Coyote Jack followed his men into the gathering dusk, pulling her along with him. The ringing in Dusty's ears was the only sound remaining. A broken trust. The pounding in Dusty's skull was a muted echo of the raw ache tearing at his chest. He sprawled on the hard-packed earth of the barn, the sinking sun slashing long, jeering shadows across the floorboards. Each breath rasped in his throat, a brutal reminder of Coyote Jack's blow. Lily. Anneliese. Baroness. The names reverberated in the hollow of his mind, each a stinging lash. Betrayal. The taste was acrid, a corrosive acid eating away at the bedrock of trust he'd so painstakingly built. He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting back the ghost of her image, the horror and fear in her eyes mingled with recognition. Had it all been a charade? The easy banter, those peaceful evenings on the porch swing, the tender way she'd nurtured the struggling tomato plants? Had he been a simpleton, blinded by solitude, craving a connection that never existed? He struggled to his feet, a sharp stab of pain lancing through his side. The barn swam for a heartbeat before righting itself. He lurched toward the water trough, flinging handfuls of frigid water onto his face. The icy shock cleared his head, though not the hollowness in his soul. Her reflection rippled back at him, superimposed on his own, the delicate sweep of her jaw, the sunburst wrinkles around her eyes when she laughed. He pictured her as he'd first seen her, lost amidst the debris of the shattered wagon train, her gaze distant and vacant. He'd taken her in, not from mere pity, but from an instinct to heal something deeply broken. He had been fractured himself, and she, somehow, even more so. He'd shown her how to ride, to care for the hens, to coax a loaf of bread from flour and yeast. Small things, yet they'd returned a measure of serenity to his life. She'd learned quickly, eagerly, filling the empty spaces of the farm with a quiet, steady industry. He remembered her nursing a sickly calf, her brow knit in fierce concentration as she coaxed it to nurse. He remembered the wildflowers she'd gathered, a vibrant bouquet in a cracked vase on the kitchen table, a burst of color against the muted landscape. He recalled countless instances of her anticipating his needs, offering a steaming mug of coffee before he asked, or wordlessly taking over a task when she noticed him flagging. These small kindnesses had, brick by brick, built a life. Had those been falsehoods too? He stumbled back into the house, the silence amplifying his despair. He ran a calloused hand over the tabletop where they'd shared countless meals. He picked up the dog-eared copy of Leaves of Grass he'd read aloud to her, the pages falling open to a well-loved passage. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. A lone tear cut a trail through the dust on his cheek. Could such a bond be feigned? Could someone fabricate such genuine care and concern? He refused to believe it. Something authentic had taken root between them, something beyond titles and concealed histories. The anger hadn't vanished entirely, but it was now laced with a heavier emotion, responsibility. He'd vowed to keep her safe. He had failed. And now she was in the clutches of a heartless man who regarded her not as Lily, the woman he had grown to cherish, but as a bauble, a mere instrument in some depraved scheme. Dusty moved toward the gun cabinet, his steps measured and firm. He unlocked it, the metallic snick echoing in the still air. He lifted down his Winchester, its familiar weight a source of comfort. He worked the lever, his hands moving with well-honed precision. He grabbed his coat, the worn leather a familiar embrace against the chill. He had no idea what awaited him. He didn't know if he stood a chance. But he knew he couldn't remain here, paralyzed by grief and shattered faith. Lily, Annalise, whatever her true name might be, she needed him. And he, despite the sting of betrayal, despite the ache in his heart, knew he needed her too. He was going to bring her home. The sheriff's resolve. The sun hammered at Dusty's shoulders as he marched toward the sheriff's office, miniature cyclones of grit mirroring his inner chaos. The weathered door groaned a familiar welcome. Inside, Sheriff Jedediah Calhoun sat hunched over a county map, his face a roadmap of hard-won battles against the West's unforgiving nature. A discarded apple core lay next to his polished tin star, gleaming brightly. Dusty, Jed greeted, his voice a gravelly drawl. Didn't figure you'd be calling today. Trouble brewing? Dusty's Adam's apple bobbed. It's Lily. Annalise. Coyote Jack's got her. The sheriff's gaze sharpened, the usual twinkle extinguished. His chair scraped back against the floorboards as he straightened. Coyote Jack? The buzzard. Spill it, son. Dusty recounted yesterday's events, the revelation of Lily's lineage, the ambush, the kidnapping. He omitted nothing, his voice raw with a desperation he thought long buried. Jed listened, his expression darkening with each syllable. When Dusty concluded, a weighty silence pressed down. Jed rose, moving to the window, his gaze fixed on the bustling street. The town sound seemed muted, distant. Coyote Jack's vermin, Jed finally said, his voice low. He feasts on the helpless. I lost my wife to his kind years back. Stagecoach got held up. Never caught those sidewinders. Dusty stared, surprised by the glimpse of pain in the older man's eyes, a mirror to his own anguish, forging a silent bond. Jed pivoted, resolve hardening his features. We'll get her back, Dusty. You have my word. We'll see that snake brought to heel. He snatched his hat from the rack, jamming it onto his head. Grab your rifle. We're raising a posse. Sunrise, we ride. Within hours, word ripped through the close-knit community. Men, forged from years of ranching and weathering the land's wrath, congregated outside the sheriff's domain. Their faces, grim masks of determination. Old Man Hemlock, his eyesight failing yet his knowledge of the terrain unsurpassed. Young Billy, scarcely a man but eager to prove his mettle. And Mrs. Gable, the town's baker, her rolling pin swapped for a shotgun, her eyes burning with righteous fervor. Jed addressed the gathering, his voice resonating across the square. Coyote Jack has gone too far. He's threatened our community, our very lives. We cannot abide this. We ride to deliver justice and rescue the Baroness. Are you with me? A resounding aye erupted, an anthem of unwavering solidarity. Dusty stood beside Jed, a surge of purpose flooding him. The grief that had held him captive began to wane, supplanted by fierce resolve. He scanned the faces of these courageous volunteers and knew he was not alone. He was fighting not only for Lily, but for his town, for a future, for redemption itself. As the sun bled crimson across the horizon, painting long shadows across the town, the posse geared up for their mission. They double-checked their firearms, secured their provisions, steeled their nerves. Anticipation hung thick in the air, a volatile cocktail of fear and exhilaration. Dusty adjusted his rifle, the cool steel a reassuring presence in his grip. He met Jed's gaze, a silent understanding solidifying between them. They were ready. They were coming for Coyote Jack. And they wouldn't stop until Lily was safe. Showdown at Shadow Mountain. The higher they climbed Shadow Mountain, the more rarefied the air became, the low scrub giving way to gnarled pines that clung tenaciously to the steep, rocky slopes. Sheriff Jed, his expression a mask of grim resolve, pointed to a torn scrap of fabric caught on a briar. Coyote's calling card. Seems bold ain't something they're trying to hide anymore. Dusty's pulse hammered against his ribs as he followed, each step a silent plea. He'd swapped his everyday boots for sturdier riding ones, the weight of the borrowed rifle a strange comfort in his hands. He was no marksman, but the memory of Lily's terrified gaze as Coyote Jack abducted her burned like a brand into his soul, igniting a resolve he hadn't suspected he possessed. The trail snaked upward, offering fleeting glimpses of the valley spread below, a tapestry of greens and browns stitched beneath the expansive sky. The posse pressed on, their mounts laboring in the thin atmosphere. Reaching a craggy promontory, Jed called a halt. This is it. Coyote's lair. Below them, tucked into the embrace of a shallow gully, a haphazard collection of shacks squatted, cobbled together from scavenged wood and roughly hewn timbers. A rickety corral contained several tired-looking horses, and a plume of smoke lazily ascended from a central chimney. Weather-beaten men, bearing the scars of hard living, lounged in the dirt yard, weapons within easy reach. Looks like they anticipated our visit, Deputy Clem observed, nervously adjusting his glasses. Jed ignored him, his gaze sweeping over the encampment. Dusty, you stay behind us. This is a matter for the law. Dusty shook his head, his voice tight with burgeoning determination. She's down there. I am going. Jed's brow furrowed. Damn it, Dusty, this isn't some errand. This is perilous. Lily's life outweighs any danger, Dusty retorted, moving past the sheriff. He held Jed's gaze, allowing no room for dispute. I know her. I know what she's capable of. Let me be of service. Jed sighed, rubbing a calloused hand across his bristled chin. All right, but stick to us, and obey my orders to the letter. The posse fanned out, positioning themselves along the ravine's edge. Jed's signal, a piercing whistle, cut through the still air. The outlaws scattered for cover, their indolent afternoon shattered by the sudden intrusion. Dusty, rifle raised, kept close to Jed, adrenaline flooding his senses. They advanced, the air stinging with the pungent odor of gunpowder as the opening shots cracked. The outlaws returned fire, bullets whining past them, tearing splinters from wood and spitting dust into the air. Reaching the perimeter, they took cover behind a woodpile. Jed bellowed, Coyote Jack, surrender now. A figure emerged from the largest of the structures. A wiry man with a predatory grin and eyes like polished coal. Coyote Jack. A rifle rested casually in his grip, his lips curled in a sardonic smile. Well, Sheriff. Didn't expect a social visit. Especially with company. He gestured dismissively towards Dusty. Release the woman, Jack, Jed commanded, his voice booming across the clearing. This ends here. Coyote Jack's laughter scraped the air, a harsh and unpleasant sound. The Baroness is quite content, Sheriff, though she does appear to long for her farmhand. He spat, the globule landing with a wet smack on the parched earth. Tell me, farmer, did she regale you with tales of her family's gold? The very reason I had her brought here. Dusty ignored the taunt, his eyes darting between the windows, desperately searching for any sign of Lily. His grip tightened on his weapon. Where's she, Jack? Coyote Jack chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Impatient, are we? Why not come and fetch her yourself? He gestured towards the building with the rifle's barrel. Come on, farmer. Show me what you're made of. Dusty didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He surged forward, ignoring Jed's shout of protest, his boots thudding against the unforgiving ground. No longer was he the grieving widower chained to the past. He was a man driven by love, fighting for a future with the woman he cherished, regardless of her name, regardless of her past, regardless of who she was meant to be. Baroness reclaimed. The air cracked with gunfire. Dusty, ignoring Jed's shouted warnings, plunged into the fray. A bullet whizzed past his ear, kicking up dust from the rickety porch of Coyote Jack's hideout. He saw Lily tied to a post near the back, her eyes wide with terror. That image fueled him. He dodged behind a water trough, returning fire with his rifle. Two of Coyote Jack's men went down, clutching their arms. He risked a glance at Lily. She was struggling against her bonds, her face contorted in effort. Suddenly, a memory, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through Lily's mind. A grand ballroom, the waltz echoing, her father's stern face. Annalise, you must uphold the family name. The word Annalise resonated, unfamiliar yet undeniably hers. Another flash, A map hidden in the family vault, the weight of responsibility settling on her young shoulders. Then the ambush, the wagon overturned, the screams. The chaos around her seemed to sharpen her senses. She noticed a loose stone in the post she was tied to. Gritting her teeth, she began to work at it, the rough edges scraping against her skin. Dusty, meanwhile, was making his way towards her, using the outbuildings as cover. He saw Coyote Jack emerge from the main cabin, a glint of gold in his hand. He recognized it instantly, the locket Lily always wore, the one he'd found clutched in her hand after the massacre. Rage, cold and potent, filled him. Coyote Jack barked an order, and 2 more men advanced on Dusty. He squeezed off 2 quick shots, dropping one. The other lunged, a knife flashing. Dusty sidestepped, the blade slicing through his sleeve, and brought the butt of his rifle crashing down on the outlaw's head. Another memory slammed into Annalise. A lesson in lockpicking, taught by her mischievous brother. She remembered the delicate touch, the subtle pressure. With renewed determination, she focused on the knot securing her wrists. Coyote Jack, seeing his men fall, roared in frustration. He raised his pistol, aiming at Dusty. But before he could fire, a voice, clear and commanding, cut through the noise. "Drop it, Jack." Everyone froze. Annalise, or rather Baroness Annalise von Rothbart, stood free, a shard of stone clutched in her hand like a dagger. Her eyes, no longer filled with confusion, blazed with intelligence and authority. She was no longer the amnesiac Lily. Coyote Jack stared, dumbfounded. "Lily? What?" "My name," she said, her voice ringing with newfound power, "is Annalise von Rothbart, and you, sir, are trespassing on what remains of my family's legacy." She didn't wait for his reaction. With a speed that surprised even herself, she hurled the stone shard, striking Coyote Jack square in the wrist. He yelped, dropping the pistol and clutching his arm. Taking advantage of the distraction, Dusty charged, tackling Coyote Jack to the ground. Sheriff Jed and the rest of the posse swarmed in, quickly subduing the remaining outlaws. The fight was over. Dusty stood, panting, looking at Annalise. She was no longer the woman he'd rescued, the woman he'd grown to love. This Annalise held herself differently, her posture regal, her gaze piercing. She was a baroness, a woman of power and privilege. She walked towards him, her expression unreadable. "Dusty," she said, her voice softer now, tinged with a familiar warmth. "Thank you. For everything." He saw a flicker of the Lily he knew in her eyes, a hint of the gratitude and affection that had blossomed between them on the farm. But there was something else there too, a distance, a responsibility, a world that he couldn't possibly understand. "Lily. Annalise," he stammered. "Are you all right?" "I am," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "I am finally myself." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the defeated outlaws, the ramshackle hideout, and finally settling back on Dusty. "But much has changed, and I must consider what to do next."